Makerere University students back onto the strike, and one would wonder, how far will they be doing so? Well, looking at it in that way, you will consider to say it is a university filled with maybe sometimes greater heights for the learners, regarded as the Harvard of the country. But pretty much, if you're to look at that and see that this strike affected the businesses, that and more is what we have for you in today's show. We will be talking Boda riders who are grateful that they were reopened. And also we shall take a look at the Makerere University strike and how businesses were affected. Moving on, still on today's show, we shall look at the commercial markets, as multiple ownership of stalls is still affecting a number of the vendors who are relocated to these various markets. In the show still, we shall be talking students' loans as universities are reopening, as most of them are back to their semesters. We can easily tell that, yes, the students' loans and students that applied, their names have been received by the Higher Education Students Financing Board. Well, on that, we shall also be talking charity, what we do understand about charity and all that. But pretty much also we shall be looking at more of what is happening from the world of, let's say, the international scene. And on the international scene, we shall be talking about the SMB cross borders. And on the cross borders, we shall be looking at Asia. We shall take our eyes to Kenya, as well as looking up to our neighbors, Tanzania. What is in there for the world of business? My name is Joel Paul Sonko, and this is Smart Means Business for you, who definitely kickstarts off your day with us. Very huge pleasure to be starting it with Smart 24 TV. Here, ours is to drive your business, and we can definitely do that by making sure that we keep you up to speed with the relevant information regarding business matters, and also giving you all the details regarding business. Well, with that, let's kickstart it off with our business reports and to check it out, what is happening. As a few weeks back, or when you look at the situation as the entire economy was reopened last month, curfew restrictions on Boda riders from 6 p.m. onwards that were imposed 2 years ago as a measure to control the spread of COVID-19, but also to control the security situation. The restriction had not been eased for the riders. However, speaking during the 41st Tarehe Sita celebrations in Mbale, President Museveni announced the reopening of the Boda, and they are now free to operate 24 hours. This in turn has birthed hope amongst the riders and has boosted expecting their businesses to boom greatly. And in this particular one, the riders are grateful after curfew was lifted on them. Let's check the details of this report.
As the entire economy was reopened last month, curfew restrictions on Boda riders from 6 p.m. onwards that were imposed 2 years ago as a measure to control the spread of COVID, but also to control security situations. The restrictions have not been eased for the riders. However, speaking during the 41st Tarehe Sita celebrations in Mbale, Museveni announced the reopening of the Boda freely to operate 24 hours. This in turn has birthed hope amongst the riders as a boost is expected in their business.
I feel very good, and I congratulate all my other Boda riders, most especially those that have really been having a hard time to work at the times. But I request government to look for the criminals within us, because we believe they exist and they are planning to use the late night hours to harm the innocent passenger. I really feel good about it, though I don't operate very late in the night, but at least that pressure and tension is eased because of operating beyond the required hours has been a big challenge. Now the tension is over. We will feel free. One can go anywhere, anytime, when assured of earning some money.
Government had explained that restriction on borders from operating at night was meant to curb criminality, since most criminals use motorcycles as an easy mean of transport. But President Museveni disclosed that government identified other measures of dealing with criminality other than curfew restrictions on Boda riders. Museveni also noted that within next 6 months, the process of installing spy chips in all vehicles and motorcycles will begin, a policy majority majority of the cyclists agreed with.
Trucking is good because there are many people in our profession doing criminal acts, giving it a bad reputation. For example, at City Square House, a passenger comes from Mapera with a bag of money, and when he comes out, someone can pretend that they work on the same stage, yet it's not where he's stationed. So when he robs, definitely the blame is on the stage. But if he has the uniforms that we have seen with someone, then the pictures of identity from the back, and then works can easily be done to identify the criminal, and this will reduce the crime rate. That is very good. Recently, I saw a Boda person robbing a passenger's phone. We don't like those thieves in our town. As you can see me in Smart, I make my money, and this is my Boda. We want to make money in the right path. That is why the idea of tracking is very good. We want to eliminate those criminals out of the city. We want the borders to be smart. We support the government tracking procedure, though we want the government to be the one on the tracks as not an individual, because if individuals track theft, we will also be on the rise among borders.
The development comes on the backdrop of a petition by activists calling an end on toll restriction on borders. The E-Trade Association of Uganda, an umbrella organization that converges companies and organizations that use the power of internet to create jobs in the country, recently asked government to lift the curfew restrictions on borders so as to enable Ugandans get access to the affordable means of transport.
And away from that, when the borders reopened on Monday the 7th, most of the borders were excited, and as a matter of fact, because they were going to work till late in the night, many of them, if I'm to take you back through with the border I actually used as I was heading home on the previous day, he was actually mocking some of the traffic officers late in the night as he was bypassing them, trying to say, hey, Afande, now you're no longer going to eat anything. Because when I asked him why he was mocking them, he says that during the curfew time when they used to operate illegally, the traffic officers and the other police officers, all the other local defense unit, part of the security, only asked for money for one to actually be given time to leave. So when you look at that, the situations in there, most of them were so grateful that this has happened and they've survived a time where they've been losing money. And in the time, however, there is also some slight change in the matter of how people are actually paying, because back in the time when it was illegal, the last 2 years, people would be charged highly. Those who would defy the odds and get onto borders would be charged highly, because the border guy would tell you, there is no way I'm going to bypass the police. So if I told you not making the money, I'm not passing through the shortcuts. So that is where things started out to be quite difficult for people to move on. But when you look at the other situation now that the borders are fully reopened, people can definitely negotiate with these guys. They're telling them you cannot take me to this distance at this using this particular amount of money. Reason being, you guys were left out. Reason being that the border people were given room to operate past curfew time. Now you operate 24 hours. So that means you're still making the money and the fuel prices are a bit low. So you know all the situation that is actually happening in there. So when you look at the situation as, if we're to look at the situation as well, as the entire economy was reopened last month, the borders were making, they had their grievances to the government. And among their grievances, they were actually crying out to government to also let them free to reopen again. The main emphasis was, if we can reopen again, it would be better for us to push on more and more. As you're looking at the situations here, is that when these border riders reopen, you could say the night economy was also going to fully reopen, because for the people who are moving late in the night, when taxis are no longer operating in some of the areas, borders are the most reachable means of transport. If told you cannot afford to utilize, you're walking, because in the time of the night, anything can happen. That is why most people choose to actually go into a safer situation. But because of the security reasons, that is why the borders sector had delayed to reopen. The industry was still locked up. But during the Tarehe Sita celebrations in Mbale, President Museveni did say that, as a matter of fact, after going through and reading the situation as the task force also understood that also these people contribute heavily to their families, and they also in turn play a pivotal role in the revenues and taxes. When you look at paying, buying the fuel, they do at the fuel stations and all that. So they realized it was also important that they should also be given time, or they should actually be given a go ahead to operate past curfew time, because other industries or other sectors had been reopened, and they are very optimistic. Some are actually excited, very happy and grateful to the president, and others were actually saying that they are willing to vote him into power after what he has done. But one would still ask if that was an achievement or it was a right that was being put out there, because when you look at the situation, it was their right to also get back to operate past curfew time. But the excitement that came to it, it was like they attached it to an achievement by the president, to see that the president has reopened them and they're willing to support him in the political elections that will be held in the next term. So you can easily tell how grateful these border riders were, because most of them now expect they're going to get the money, most of the money that they have not been getting late in the night without beating the customers. But surprisingly, without beating curfew rules, surprisingly, some of the border riders or operators were not happy with the reopening of the curfew. Like I said earlier, before, that some of these people say it was better to operate during the time when things were illegal, that then you would feel the money you get in there is worth it. But at this time, some of them feel like one of the border guys I had to also interact with says that he feels it is better to set the lockdown again so that they can charge highly. Because when they charge highly, for a distance from, let's say, Chibuye to Kajansi, could charge you around 10 to 15,000. Now at this time, someone with budget will actually negotiate with them 5, 3, 4,000 or even 2,000, because they will tell them, well, I will take a taxi if at all you do not want to take me, and the taxi is only 2,000, as cheap as that. So when you try to consider all the situations, you can greatly understand why some are not happy, others are happy. For those that were actually following the presidential guidelines, they're very happy that the border industry is reopened. Then for those that were making high profits during the lockdown, are not happy because when they were defying the odds, they could charge highly. Well, that aside, let's turn our eyes to the SMB across borders. Across borders, we look at the stories that are making headlines in the world of business from our neighbors on the African continent as well, and also looking at the international scene. And when we look at our very first story, we take it from our neighbors in Kenya. And this particular one is relating to the World Bank, which is set to give Kenya $200 million as an agricultural loan. The World Bank will give Kenya $200 million to support various development projects to improve food security in the country. Vinay Kunar Vutukru, senior agriculture economist with the bank of the World Bank, said on Monday that the institution is negotiating with the state on the new loan that will be channeled to various agricultural value chains. The World Bank is currently funding various projects in the sector valued at $500 million, as Vutukuru made the remarks during the launch of a 5-year migration and invasive pests and weeds management strategy for 2022 to 2027 in Nairobi. So as a matter of fact, they will be looking at loaning, Kenya will be looking at applying for a loan of $200 million from the World Bank as to help in the agricultural process in terms of the pests, the weeds management as well. So you can easily tell that the Kenyans are trying as much as they can to boost all the economy, the economic sectors, trying as much as they can to see that they revive, to recover past the COVID-19 pandemic that greatly hit all the markets in there and also hit the sectors, the various sectors from agriculture, tourism, look at education, and all the other sectors in Kenya's economy. Just like when we would say here in Uganda, if we look at that. Well, moving on to the other cross-border business story, still with Kenya, but another country is into this one. Kenya and Ethiopia have reached a new power purchase deal. This time around, we're talking about power trade. And Kenya reached a new agreement with Ethiopia in a bid to further expanded purchase of hydro-processed cheap power from Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa is the capital of Ethiopia. The new arrangement was reached after an Ethiopian delegation, which was led by the Ethiopian Prime Minister, Ethiopia's State Minister of Finance, Eyob Tekalin, who visited Nairobi from February 2nd to 4th February 2022. So among the key bilateral talks that they had and among the key discussions they had included power trade. The two nations deliberated on the previously signed power trade agreements, finalization and operationalization guidelines and the procedures, as well as agreements on the progress made on each side. So when you look at, they're trying as much as they can to work on amongst each other and then enforce the power agreements, the power trade agreements that they had actually got. And when you look at the situation as well, finalization and operationalization guidelines and procedures, as well as the agreements on the progress that were made on each side, that is between Kenya and Ethiopia. Neighbors, Ethiopia is in the north part of Kenya, so you can see that when these trade deals come on board, it is to help these countries build bilateral relations through trade and harmonizing various details to do with the economy. And in the long run, it is to benefit both countries to see that they can both benefit from these relations. Such agreements can also take us back to the just concluded Joint Permanent Commission between Uganda and Tanzania here, when we previously had ours, and ours was also targeting trade, removing the trade barriers, the trade restrictions that were there, working on the issue of work permits, and also talking about the East African crude oil pipeline project. So now, between the deal that was amongst Kenya and Ethiopia, or between Kenya and Ethiopia, was to also talk about trade amongst any other factors, trade, politics, but when you look at the business angle part of it, they also highlighted the power trade agreements. Away from Kenya, let's take our eyes to India. As this time around, if we are to, before we go to India, let's try to also look at Tanzania as we sum it up with the East African Community bloc before we take it to the international scene. Tanzania has agreed to approve the EU trade deal, that is the European Union trade deal. The East African Community could finally sign the new economic partnership agreement with the European Union this very month as a bloc after Tanzania changed its initial stance. And Joseph Borrell, the European Union Foreign Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security, says Tanzania has agreed to join the rest of the East African Community countries in ratifying the deal that will see the region enjoy quota-free and duty-free access to the lucrative European market. Nairobi and Kigali were the only two countries in the region to sign an EPA deal. The EPA is the Economic Partnership Agreement. And this deal was signed with Europe in 2016, that is with the European Union, under a special arrangement under a temporary pact with the European Union to allow its goods to access the expensive market duty-free. Normally, horticulture produce from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania enjoy preferential terms, and exempting them from paying taxes to access the European Union market, making the goods more competitive. But following the hesitation to sign the pact by some East African Community members, The Kenyan goods stood for special export taxes in order to protect certain sectors as they consider sensitive and to discourage the exportation of raw materials to Europe. Tanzania was cautious in signing the deal as they believed that cheap goods from European countries will flood their markets, affecting the locally produced ones, especially in the agricultural sector. So following up on the same matter, stakeholders in the horticulture sector want Kenya to be keen before endorsing the deal with the European Union because there are new clauses that may restrict the access of Kenya's produce to the European market. For instance, the European market is introducing a green deal that would require Kenya to ban most of the pesticides in use, a move that some of the Kenyans are not okay with. Some of the policymakers in Kenya are not okay with. So that is why they're trying to see that before also Kenya seals this deal with the European Union, it will have to first look through the outcomes or to look through and see whether the agreement and the terms and conditions are favorable to the Kenyans and how they run their business sectors. Well, besides that, when you look at that, the other East African countries, Uganda inclusive, Kenya, Rwanda, had already agreed to a European Union trade deal. I was looking for more of a verb, but it would be a European Union trade deal as Rwanda and Kenya, to be precise, Nairobi and Kigali, had already signed a trade agreement deal in 2016 with the European Union, becoming the very first from the East African Community bloc. But with this, Tanzania joining the pact means that it was the only remaining country. And the European Union is foreign representative for foreign affairs and security. Joseph Borrell believes that this is a very huge step for business between the East African Community bloc and the European Union. Summing up with our SMB across borders, we take our eyes to India as India has a new billionaire, and this new billionaire has apparently the new Asia's most richest, I would say, richest billionaire. And the gentleman I'm actually talking about is Gautam Adani, who unseats Mukesh Ambani as Asia's richest billionaire. India's Gautam Adani has overtaken his fellow countryman Mukesh Ambani, who is also from India, to become the wealthiest person in Asia. That is according to Bloomberg's list of the world's richest people that was created. The 59-year-old founder of Adani Group controls companies ranging from ports and aerospace to thermal energy and coal. And now he's reportedly having a net worth of $88.5 billion. That is according to to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index. Adani has seen his wealth skyrocket. When you look at his wealth skyrocketing during this pandemic, as other billionaires were struggling to retain their places, his businesses were actually skyrocketing. His wealth was actually increasing in heaps and bounds. He was worth less than $40 billion last year, $40 billion last year. But as we speak, he's $88.5 billion rich. So he was worth less than 40 billion. So he was less than 40 billion by February 2021, because we are now in 2022. And with this massive spike, he has overtaken India's energy to tech entrepreneur Mukesh Ambani to become the world's 10th richest person. He is the richest person in Asia. So there is no Chinese in here. This time around, it is an Indian. And that means the second richest person in Asia is Mukesh Ambani. And Mukesh Ambani is currently also coming in from India. And speaking of that, Adani Group has performed exceptionally well on the Indian stock market during the pandemic. The shares of Adani Enterprises have jumped more than 1,000% on the National Stock Exchange in Mumbai. That was since June 2020. So when you really look at Adani and why he's been making the money since lockdown, when you look at his wealth, He has, according to even the stock market in India, his shares of the enterprises have also jumped up to 1,000% since 2020. And that was on the National Stock Exchange in Mumbai. Since 2020, that was still in the pandemic. Remember, India is one of those countries that were greatly affected by the pandemic, losing a number of people. However much they have a very stable health sector, if I am to say. And there is also a sign that investors are optimistic about Adani's ability to bet on sectors such as infrastructure and renewable energy, which are key to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's economic development goals. So most of the investors in India are also very optimistic that if at all they put their money into Adani's group, there is a possibility of making the sales in there. Because look at a man who has been able to succeed even during the pandemic. Well, Indians are also very good business people in one way or the other. You can agree even here in Uganda. If you're to look at some of the wealthiest individuals that we have, some of them are of Indian heritage. And then still, as a matter of fact, it is very difficult to trace the richest person here in Uganda. But then you could easily tell, for people who are on ground, they can easily tell you that this man has money, the other man has money, Sonko has money. So this is how people will clearly tell you, that is how you know that this person is wealthy. So in Uganda here, I think in Africa it's very rare to find someone being referred to as the wealthiest person. I don't know, if you're to look at our traditional beliefs, some of the wealthiest people here do believe that once he's known to be rich, people will start hating on him. People will try to, as much as they can, to bewitch him, pull him down. That is why most people try to keep their wealth away from the media. But well, when you look at most of the wealthiest people that we look at across the world, most of them have their details and all their assets, even on Wikipedia, whereby you will just put in his information and they will just give you all the details regarding where he stays, the businesses he started with. So I don't know why it is so difficult with the rich people here in Uganda, or the rich people in some of the African countries, or the wealthiest individuals in Africa. And in most cases, some of them feel like it is going to act as a threat. And once you showcase what you have, people call it pride. People say you're so, you're a show off and you want to do all this. But well, when you look at the other countries, people tend to actually put it out there, put their wealth in there, and these governments are supporting this to come out so that someone has his assets known before engaging in anything to do with money laundering, before government can actually put all those cases onto you. Well, that aside, let's have a look at the produce updates from the markets of Kalere, Chibuye, Nakawa, as well as Nakasero, to check out how the different produce is ranging, or the different prices of the different produce is ranging, from the tomatoes, when you look at the beans, look at matoke, maize flour, rice, sugar, and well, surely it will be of help to you as you budget accordingly. Take a look.